If you've ever felt just a little bit uneasy about how much of your actual life lives on servers you don't control, well, you're in the right place. Okay, let's dive into this. Today, we're doing an explainer on a proposed structural shift that aims to completely redefine our relationship with the internet. We're looking at the blueprint for the Universal Identity Sovereign. Think of this as a comprehensive framework outlining a theoretical future for our digital identities, one that moves us way away from centralized control and right toward true individual sovereignty.
So who actually owns your digital identity? I mean, it seems like a straightforward question, right? But think about your daily habits for a second. Think about how many times, just today, you've blindly clicked the button that says, sign in with Google or log in with Facebook. The uncomfortable truth of our current digital age is that when you click those buttons, you aren't actually using an identity that you own. You're literally just asking a massive tech corporation for permission to use your own persona. It's kind of wild when you think about it. Under this current system, your identity is basically a borrowed asset just sitting on their servers, totally subject to their ever-changing terms of service.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the stark contrast it paints between where we are right now and where we might be heading. In our current era, Web 2, your identity is inherently borrowed. It's managed, tracked, and hoarded by the central servers of just a few massive tech giants. But this blueprint, it proposes a total shift to what it calls Web 4, an era defined by absolute sovereignty. It's outlining a massive transition from a system of corporate leasing, where you're essentially begging a server for access to your own digital footprint, to a system of radical, user-held keys where you, and only you, are the sole sovereign of your data.
Section 1. Introducing the UIID.
So how does this framework actually propose bridging the gap from a borrowed identity to absolute sovereignty? Well, according to the blueprint, the answer is the UIID, which stands for Universal Integrated Identity Decoupled. And this is designed to be the absolute mandatory foundation of Web 4. The whole purpose behind this architecture is to return absolute ownership of the self directly back to you, the individual. In this model, identity undergoes a total transformation. It completely stops being a leased corporate asset. Instead, the framework argues that your digital identity should become an inalienable human right, inextricably linked only to you and physically impossible for a third-party administrator to just revoke.
Section 2. Radical Absolute Ownership.
Now, the framework outlines several radical ownership features. But honestly, it helps to think of these more like personal digital superpowers rather than just dry tech jargon. First up, the UIID is proposed to be biometrically secured, meaning it's uniquely mathematically tied to your actual physical self. But the real game changer is this second concept. You hold the cryptographic keys. Because you hold the keys, third-party platforms are theoretically completely powerless over your core identity. I mean, think about it. A platform like Linkspreed couldn't arbitrarily delete you. You'd be literally immune to network-wide shadow bans. Plus, right now, every click, every preference is routinely bundled up and sold by data brokers because they have access to the central databases. Under the UIID model, your data literally cannot be sold by these brokers, simply because they don't have the keys to access your persona. You do.
So the crucial point is, under this Web 4 model, you would have exactly one ID for everything. The framework aims to completely eliminate the need to juggle fragmented digital selves across dozens of different apps and physical locations. Because right now, let's be honest, we live in a totally chaotic clutter of physical and Web 2 reality. We lug around passports, driver's licenses, physical keys, and we juggle dozens if not hundreds of different logins and passwords. It's a nightmare of constant friction and password fatigue, which, thankfully, would end forever under this system. In the proposed Web 4 reality, all of those separate, easily lost, vulnerable items are replaced entirely by your UIID. It becomes the single point of verification you need. And the source material highlights just how broad this is meant to be. This one ID is designed to seamlessly handle everything from opening a bank account in the UAE all the way to physically unlocking your own front door.
Section 3. The Filter of Truth.
We are living in an era of escalating anxieties on the internet. Between AI-generated deepfakes, highly sophisticated scams, and just a massive tidal wave of automated bots, it's getting really hard to know who is actually real on the other side of the screen. To combat this noise, the UIID acts as what the blueprint elegantly calls a proof of personhood. It carries a lot of philosophical weight, actually. It allows you to mathematically prove to other users, communities, and digital services that you are a real, breathing human being. You're not just typing in a password that a bot could guess or brute force. You are securely proving your genuine personhood in a sea of algorithms, establishing immediate, verifiable trust without relying on some central authority. And this brilliantly illustrates our next core point, zero-knowledge proofs, which directly lead to zero server exposure. Now, you might be wondering, wait, if I have to prove I'm a real person everywhere I go, aren't I just constantly handing over my private documents? The answer is a resounding no. Think of a zero-knowledge proof kind of like a bouncer checking your ID at a club. The bouncer only needs to see that you are over 21, right? They don't actually need to know your exact home address, your weight, or even your specific birth date. Zero-knowledge proofs do exactly this, but cryptographically. You prove a statement is true without ever revealing the underlying data that makes it true.
To make this magic happen, the UID relies on a local-first storage architecture. Unlike current Web 2 providers that hoard all our private information in these massive centralized databases, which, let's face it, act as giant honeypots for hackers, your data stays right on your own device. It's never just sitting on a central server. Through those advanced zero-knowledge proofs we just talked about, you can prove your humanity or your credentials without ever actually transmitting the private documents behind the proof. You remain entirely in control, sharing only the mathematical proof that you meet a requirement exactly when you want to, directly from your own local hardware.
Section 4. The 2036 Digital Anchor. Let's move to and see how this builds into the grand timeline of this Web 4 shift.
So, zooming out to look at the broader, global picture. Starting from our present day, where we rely so heavily on those borrowed, corporate-controlled Web 2 identities, this blueprint plots a course for the near future marked by an active shift toward this local-first architecture. And the authors of the blueprint target the year 2036 as the absolute climax of this transformation. They project that by following standard hardware and software adoption curves, it'll take roughly a decade of mainstream introduction to have a staggering 1 billion people securely anchored by this technology by 2036. That's 1 billion people theoretically reclaiming their digital selves.
Because, ultimately, the blueprint envisions this framework as a permanent, secure, and sovereign extension of your physical existence. This is the core essence of the digital anchor. The proposed UID model aims to ensure that your digital footprint is finally, truly yours. It's designed to be permanently and safely anchored to your physical reality, fully in your control, protected by your own biometrics, and secured by keys that only you hold. It's a total paradigm shift, from being a managed product in some corporate database to being an independent, sovereign entity online.
If we actually transition to this Web 4 world, where digital identity is treated as an inalienable right rather than just a rented privilege, the possibilities shift entirely back to you, the user. The architecture completely removes the middleman, putting the control squarely at the localized individual level, which leaves us with a pretty provocative question to consider as we wrap up this explainer. When tech giants lose the keys, what will you unlock with yours?